You know, I'm not afraid to be a hardcore truth teller, not afraid of controversy, so I'm going to say something pretty out there. I think superheroes are popular. I don't know if you could tell from the multiple billions, maybe trillions that they've earned worldwide. Superheroes are pretty darn popular in the popular consciousness. The strange thing about it all is that a lot of people don't really read superhero comics. The problem is that superhero continuity, at its worst, expects you to read decades worth of stories to understand anything. And publishers are aware of this. This is what leads to things like Crisis on Infinite Earths, which ironically, in attempting to clean up the continuity, makes even more confusing content. It doesn't help that it's also difficult to follow. There's constantly new series, new numberings. Anybody trying to sit down and actually read something all the way through is likely to be confused because you have to constantly reference different series that might not be published in different books. So, what if I told you that there was a series that fixes all of these problems? Welcome to the world of Astro City. It is a long-running, about 100 issues comic by Kurt Busiek and illustrated mostly by Brad Anderson, covers by Alex Ross. It also happens to be maybe my favorite comic book of all time, and it's the story of Astro City itself. The series has no real protagonist. It's a major metropolitan city with a high percentage of superheroes. It's truthfully about the city itself and the citizens, how they live their lives in Astro City, in this strange, unusual, superhero-filled world. It really is maybe my favorite comic of all time. So how about we start with the very first issue, called In Dreams. The world of Astro City is filled with archetypes of superheroes you will recognize. And one of the big, most important superheroes in Astro is a guy named the Samaritan. No points for guessing who he's supposed to be. AKA the Big Red, he is a classic superhero in the mold of Superman. Fundamentally kind and honest guy who's trying his best with the superhero thing. And the first issue opens up with him dreaming of flying. His favorite thing in the world to do is fly. He admits that he's so busy with his responsibilities of being a superhero that he never really has the chance to do it much. First issue is essentially a day in the life of the Samaritan as he flies around the world protecting it from a calamity of disasters. One of those heartbreaking things is that he gets to fly a little bit, but it's never enough. He also has a full-time job that he has to do as a fact checker, which he can do at super speeds, but still. You know, this is a really good opening issue because, you know, the life in the day of Samaritan is also a life in the day of the Astro City world, and we get to see a lot of the inner workings of Astro City. He also has to meet up with the Justice League equivalent of this world, which is called the Honor Guard. It's them comparing notes, but there's also some really smart world building. This is my favorite method of world building. Instead of sitting you down and explaining to you, well, this is how the world works, and this is how we have to do this and this and this, the characters already know how the world works, and they're just living their lives. According to this comic, sometime prior to all of this, there was an alien invasion, and they've been working on fixing up the machine that detects aliens. I believe it's a more realistic and honest approach to the way the world works. I believe it's a more honest and frank way to approach the concept of world building. Life has happened before you, and life will happen after you. And you only ever really get brief snapshots of everything that's going on in the world. It's a relatively mature way to look at those subjects, and I think that extends even to the way they handle the characters. So ASO works for a magazine in Astro City, and he has to fact check the most beautiful women in Astro City article that they do every year, which he admits he hates doing. I like this. I think it's a really honest and frank look at a guy like this. He is sexually frustrated, and he says he doesn't have time to date people or romance people. He's too busy with his duties protecting the world. The amount of time I've spent obsessing over this one moment in particular, I really like that it is an uncomfortable and intimate look into Samaritan's head. Saying that it is a very uncomfortable look into his head of a very sad and lonely man who maybe just needs some companionship in his life that isn't about being a superhero. It does creep me out just a tiny bit, this thought he has. I understand why people might be a little bit icked out by it, because truthfully, I kind of am. And it's the one sort of weird note in what is otherwise a flawless series. It's kind of cliche to say that he has literally the weight of the world on his shoulders, but he literally does have the weight of the world on his shoulders. He even feels compelled to show up to award ceremonies because he knows people will feel bad if he doesn't come. Comic goes out of the way to show you thousands and thousands of awards he has. Number one overriding thing I get reading this first issue is just I feel so bad for him. His life is relentless and never ending. That's kind of what's so great about Astro City is it has this real sense of lived-in worldliness. It's not a series concerned with selling you the latest crossover. It wants to tell these great, just human stories about people living in the world of superheroes. I'd like to review every single one of these, hopefully, because it gives me an excuse to reread all of them.